Lesson 3, Federalism. Federalism is an interesting concept to talk about because for some it can be a little bit confusing. Federalism is a system of government in which power is divided between two levels, a central or national government and local governments. For our model of the United States, there are two basic levels or divisions of power. Let's use the analogy of a cake. If federalism was a layer cake, the yellow cake here would represent the central government because the central government must come first in order to create state and local governments, which here is represented as the chocolate layer of the cake. Now, the framers anticipated there would be issues when states and national laws would conflict. The way that the framers decided to solve this problem is called the Supremacy Clause, and in it, we look to the Constitution to be the supreme law of the land, and the Supreme Court as the umpire. Powers of the national government. We say these are delegated. There are three types of delegated powers: expressed, implied, and inherent. Expressed are written out in words. For instance, if I were to express to you that we shouldn't have homework tonight, I have said it to you in my spoken word. I have expressed it to you. These powers come from Article 1. Implied powers are suggested or inferred. These powers of the national government would be things like racial discrimination. Racial discrimination is only addressed a few times in our amendments of the Constitution. Therefore, it is implied that discrimination is wrong, and that states and the national government should do what is necessary so that discrimination does not occur. Inherent is probably the more difficult to understand of the three, and that is this "because I said so" excuse. If you've ever asked your parent or guardian, can I go do this? Can I go to this party? Can I go see a movie with my friends? And they say no. And you say, why? And they say, because I said so. And that is their right as your parent to say no. Now, inherent are things that our government has to do just because it's a country. So just because your parent is a parent, they can say no. This is because our country is a country, our federal national government has to do certain things, such as regulate immigration. You think about it, there are people that are bound to come to our United States of America. And if we don't somehow regulate that, whether it be large regulations or small regulations, and that is just to manage immigration, then it really wouldn't make sense. We have to manage ourselves as a country. Therefore, this is an inherent power of our national government with immigration. So in our cake analogy, this is your yellow cake. This is the basis of our country. That is the national government. State governments are reserved powers that are received by the Constitution that are not granted to the federal government. So meaning, if a power is not specifically stated and given to the national government, or implied or inherent, it is then reserved or saved for the states. So for instance, in our Constitution you will see the written words, Congress shall coin money, and so that would not be a reserved power, that is a delegated power. But it says nothing about driving laws. In fact, when the Constitution was written, the framers were not driving cars around, or social media, etc. So some of these powers have therefore become state powers. Driving laws, state of Kansas takes care of issuing driver's licenses. So if you look at your driver's license, it doesn't say driver of the United States of America, it says state of Kansas driver's license. Education has always been a reserved power of the state until fairly recently, when we've had laws that have kind of managed and regulated students with disabilities, as well as managing with No Child Left Behind. So traditionally, education has really been a reserved power to the state. Now this is your chocolate cake. This is the top layer of your cake, which comes after the national government. Now, there are some things that both levels of government will do, and those are called concurrent powers because they are shared or they happen at the same time by the state and the national government. So, for instance, taxes. When you go to file your taxes in April, you will file and pay taxes to the federal government and the state government. So both levels tax you and you pay to both. And this is a great example of concurrent powers. If this were a cake, we would probably get away from our layered cake and use a marbled cake. So this would be our chocolate and our yellow cake, and it would be marbled and swirled together. Now, at the bottom of your follow-along guide, please fill in the Venn diagram. On the left, you should list a few, and I would say about 3 delegated powers to the national government. On the right, please list about 3, again, reserved powers to the states. And in the middle, you'll see concurrent powers. And so again, I would list about 3 on your Venn diagram, just to kind of give you an idea of the different powers that we're talking about. It's kind of hard to think about abstract, so if we can think about some concrete things that happen, elections, public safety, copyright laws, foreign policy, building roads, criminal justice, and etc., then we can kind of really get an idea of just how federalism works in our country. Now, there is an extra credit opportunity available to you if you would like to participate. And this would be the form of creating something that would be edible that you could bring into the class to share. Now, simply bringing in something to eat would not necessarily get you extra credit points. However, if you bring something in to eat that is representative of federalism and you can explain it and it makes sense, logically it makes sense, like our layered cake, like our marble cake, then you can earn 20 extra credit points. Then the cool thing about that is we get to eat all of the goodies that everybody brings in on this day. Now, our federalism extra credit will be due on block day, either the 28th or the 29th, whichever day your class meets of January. And if you, again, would like to bring something in to eat, it doesn't necessarily have to be a cake. It could be something like chips and dip, anything that would be representative of federalism. Now remember, the catch is to get the extra credit, you have to practice and understand federalism enough that you can explain how your edible treat that you're going to bring in to class to share is representative of federalism, and that is a division of powers between the state and local government. So think back to the cake analogy with the yellow cake and the chocolate cake and use that as your foundation to create your extra credit. Remember, this is optional. It is not an assignment. It is only if you would like to bring something in. This is the conclusion of Lesson 3, Federalism.